What does it feel like to be addicted to drugs? This is a real-life story told by a well-known entrepreneur. I was in a car accident in 1996. A tire blew and the car spun around and flipped over. The car was destroyed, but I walked away. It wasn't until a year later that my back problem started. I had herniated 2 discs, L4, L5. The doctors prescribed prescription painkillers since there really was nothing else that could be done to fix or correct my injury. Back then the dangers of opioid addiction were not well known, and the US laws allowed you to be on them for up to 2 years. As my 2-year limit was approaching, I knew that something had to be done because I was literally 90 days away from my RX not being refilled. I woke up one day and realized better than killing the pain, the drugs were actually making it worse. I remember running my fingers through my hair after I got out of the shower and my hair hurt. Being on RX painkiller shuts down the pain receptors but also makes you hypersensitive. I made the decision to quit right then and there. I cleared my schedule for 2 weeks and I hid the car keys to the car and I turned off my phone and I waited. I waited for the ass whipping that I knew was coming. Withdrawal happens slowly at first and then hits you like a freight train full of rocks. I spent 2 weeks on the sofa drinking water and ordering pizza in those rare times when I felt like eating. When it was over, I was confronted with serious back pain that was bad, but not as bad as it was on the drugs. It was hard to walk because the pain was so bad. I found someone skilled in the art of massage therapy and I spent 2 hours a week on the table for 2 years. At the end of that time, I was able to walk pain-free. 200 hours on the table had cured me of what drugs couldn't. I still spend 2 hours every 2 weeks on the table to keep my back in shape. I exercise and I eat well. Life is much better. The drugs aren't worth it. Now the US limits you to 6 months on the drugs. I can unfortunately tell you why. I do not advise quitting cold turkey like I did because it is pure hell. It's been over 16 years and I have not had any opioid painkillers again yet. I hope I never do. I would rather live with the chronic pain. Another answer from someone who experienced this in the past goes something like this.
I'm in my mid-20s and a PhD student in science from an upper-middle-class family. Oh, and I'm American for cultural context. I'd also like to preface this all by saying that I am not aware of anyone personally or many people that are drug addicts and didn't have pre-existing mental health problems. My drug usage is significantly related to issues with hyperactivity and depression. I was one of the top of the class sort of kids, but the one who was always bouncing off the walls in class. I am an innately curious person and psychedelics like mushrooms are always used for personal growth and exploration. The drugs I had problems with are alcohol, weed, benzos, painkillers, sleeping pills, coke, amphetamine, and anti-sedatives in general. People get addicted for different reasons. The exploration part of drug usage was fun. The self-medication part was less fun. In high school I loved parties, playing music, and skateboarding, and booze and weed were always in tow. I had a ton of fun and learned a lot about myself and people doing it, but there were other forces at work I didn't catch on to till years later. Being addicted to something is to think about it obsessively. By obsessively I mean to the point that it blocks other thoughts. You rationalize your decisions based on drugs. You think to yourself that it's fine if you start alienating your friends by being overly aggressive when eliciting their help finding drugs. You know you're going to feel good once you get it. And when the deal is locked in place, when you know for sure you've got it, you actually get a happiness jolt. You can even get this jolt just by prepping the drug. This was most pronounced with cocaine caused by how far down the rabbit hole I was with that drug, which can happen fast and its biochemical properties. I remember specifically one time when I was prepping a line. By the way, most people in college I knew didn't do harder drugs. I felt a rush of blood to my head and lower body just like I was actually doing a line, but I hadn't had coke in my system for days. When you're addicted to something, it makes time in between drugs suck. Everything is boring, and you spend a lot of time playing mental games to try and pass the time till you can get up again, when all the background pain of the day can be carried away. These thoughts hijack your mind. They interrupt serious conversations with family or lovers. They ruin your sleep. I remember lying in bed in college trying to fall asleep, spending what seemed like forever convincing myself not to do a line of coke. Eventually you cave in, there you are high, but not enjoying it and wanting to go to sleep, but can't. Being addicted screws with your ability to gauge your own limits, to know what your body can actually handle. Add depression on top of that and you've got a nasty mix. I remember when Heath Ledger died, I had essentially the same cocktail in my body numerous times that semester and luckily made it out. Though there were numerous 3-day hangovers and episodes of vomiting in my sleep that told me I was cutting it close. You have to get that fix you need. You can't go to the party if you don't. You'll be agitated. You won't have fun. You can't have fun. in my social circumstance it made me have to build a fake life or persona. I couldn't let anyone find out what I was doing, so no one ever knew what I was on, and I didn't tell them. I remember doing some coke and Xanax before showing up at a party with my research friends in the summer. I drew out a fat line and did it, and then made about 2 minutes just before walking out the door before I had to tell my roommate I needed to use the bathroom. I did another line and came out with some lame-ass excuse and then convinced him to do a shot or something before we left. I then needed another line just a few minutes after the last one and made up another excuse to go to my room for some dumb reason. Once you get the roommates drunk enough, they stop asking where you're going. I ended up doing 2 lines and subsequently floated over to the party across campus. Out on the balcony with friends, in the middle of a sentence I collapsed, and I mean full, movie-level collapse onto the ground. Woke up a split second later completely confused and asked my friends, did I just fall? They laughed because they didn't know what was going on. But I had passed the fun point and the dangerous point. When you have to live 2 lives, you have to struggle alone, or at least I did. Addiction screws with your self-esteem. Why can't I shake this? Why can't I put this down? Why can everyone else do this without drugs? This fuels depression, which fuels drug abuse. And yeah, you spend all your money on drugs. I even sold some of my stuff to get drug money. You fantasize about accumulating a big storage of drugs. This occupies way too much of your brain power. You do end up involved in sexual encounters you didn't really want. In my case, just poor decisions that screwed with close friendships. It endangers you. It endangers those around you. It makes you more boring. It zaps your creativity. When managed, if you can, drugs can be a great thing. The mind and diversity of physical experiences are definitely worth exploring, but for some of us it's easy to get trapped in just the getting high part and let it hijack your life. Be safe out there.
Many people don't understand why or how other people become addicted to drugs. They may mistakenly think that those who use drugs lack moral principles or willpower, and that they could stop their drug use simply by choosing to. In reality, drug addiction is a complex disease, and quitting usually takes more than good intentions or a strong will. Drugs change the brain in ways that make quitting hard, even for those who want to. Fortunately, researchers know more than ever about how drugs affect the brain and have found treatments that can help people recover from drug addiction and lead productive lives. What is drug addiction? Addiction is a chronic disease characterized by drug seeking and use that is compulsive or difficult to control, despite harmful consequences. The initial decision to take drugs is voluntary for most people, but repeated drug use can lead to brain changes that challenge an addicted person's self-control and interfere with their ability to resist intense urges to take drugs. These brain changes can be persistent, which is why drug addiction is considered a relapsing disease. People in recovery from drug use disorders are at increased risk for returning to drug use even after years of not taking the drug. What happens to the brain when a person takes drugs? Most drugs affect the brain's reward circuit by flooding it with the chemical messenger dopamine. This reward system controls the body's ability to feel pleasure and motivates a person to repeat behaviors needed to thrive, such as eating and spending time with loved ones. This overstimulation of the reward circuit causes the intensely pleasurable high that can lead people to take a drug again and again. So can drug addiction be cured or prevented? As with most other chronic diseases, such as diabetes, asthma, or heart disease, treatment for drug addiction generally isn't a cure. However, addiction is treatable and can be successfully managed. People who are recovering from an addiction will be at risk for relapse for years and possibly for their whole lives. Research shows that combining addiction treatment medicines with behavioral therapy ensures the best chance of success for most patients. Treatment approaches tailored to each patient's drug use patterns and any co-occurring medical, mental, and social problems can lead to continued recovery. That's what it's like to be addicted to drugs. It's exhausting, both physically and mentally. And then one day, God willing, hopefully, you get tired enough. Tired of feeling sad, and desperate, and lonely, and sick, and anxious, and unbalanced. Hopefully one day you get tired of feeling tired, and you begin to question what else is out there and how you can maybe rebuild your life and try something new. The beautiful thing is, you can. Addicts go into recovery every single day, and they stay clean and sober, and are able to live and thrive and create a blueprint of living and a life they are proud of. It happens every day. It just takes a little courage.